We're going to dive into just 4 verses from the ancient prophet Isaiah. But trust me, these aren't just any verses. They paint this picture of judgment so powerful, it literally promises to shake the foundations of the entire world. Let's get right into it. But first, let me ask you something. What happens when your world gets shaken to its absolute core? I mean, everything you rely on, the structures of society, your sense of security, what happens when all of that just starts to fall apart? It's a pretty terrifying thought, right? Well, the prophet Isaiah gives a chillingly vivid answer. And we're going to break down his vision by digging into just 4 specific verses. Isaiah chapter 2, verses 19 all the way through 22. Okay, so the first thing we have to wrap our heads around is the central, terrifying image that the whole passage is built on. The idea of the earth itself shaking. Verse 19 just drops us right into the middle of the chaos. You have people running for their lives, scrambling into caves and holes in the rocks. And notice what they're running from. It's this wild paradox. They're running from both the fear of the Lord and the glory of his majesty. And this absolute terror is sparked by one single event, the moment God rises to shake terribly the earth. So what does this shaking really mean? This is so important. The source material is really clear that we're not just talking about a literal earthquake here. No, it's a powerful metaphor for total societal collapse. Try to imagine you're living back then, and these massive invading armies from, say, Assyria or Babylon are on your doorstep. Your city walls are being torn down, your government is gone. That's the earthquake. That's your entire world being shaken to pieces. And you know what? Isaiah actually leaves us a clue about this metaphorical meaning in another part of his book. Take a look at chapter 14. He talks about the king of Babylon as a man who did shake kingdoms. See that? It's the exact same language. By doing this, Isaiah is connecting the destructive power of these human empires to this ultimate divine shaking. It's like all the chaos on earth is just a shadow of something much, much bigger. Now let's jump to verse 20, because while people are hiding in fear, something really fascinating starts to happen. Their entire worldview begins to radically change. Right in the middle of all this terror, Isaiah says that people will grab their most valuable things, their idols made of pure silver and gold, and just throw them away. They're literally casting them out to the moles and to the bats. I mean, just think about that for a second. The thing that was once the most sacred is now just garbage. So what we're really seeing here is a psychological journey, right? The absolute terror of this judgment forces this moment of brutal honesty. When you're cowering in a dark cave, you suddenly realize that these expensive man-made statues offer you absolutely no protection. They are completely and utterly useless. And that realization immediately leads to total rejection. And think about where they're throwing them, to the moles and the bats. This is so symbolic. It's not random. They're taking these things from their pedestals and their high places and just chucking them into the dirt, into the darkest caves. And what do we know about moles and bats? They're basically blind. It's the perfect metaphor for the absolute blindness and powerlessness of the idols themselves. Okay, now before we get to the final warning, I want to point out a really cool literary trick that Isaiah is using here. It just shows how deliberate and skillful this writing is. So let's take a look at verse 21. You see that? Verse 21 is almost a word-for-word copy of verse 19. Isaiah pulls us right back to that core image, people hiding in terror while the world shakes apart. This is no accident. In ancient writing, repetition is like taking a giant neon highlighter to your text. It's Isaiah basically screaming, "Pay attention! This right here, this is the main event." And all of this, the fear, the shaking, the rejected idols, it's all building up to the final verse in this section, which acts as the ultimate takeaway. It's both a direct command and a very stark warning. So, after all this destruction, Isaiah lands on this command. Cease ye from man. In other words, stop putting your trust in humanity. And why? Because man is just a creature whose breath is in his nostrils. And then he hits you with this devastating rhetorical question. Wherein is he to be accounted of? Basically, when you strip it all away, what is a human really worth in the grand scheme of things? Now that phrase, whose breath is in his nostrils, might just sound poetic, but it's not. It is the key that unlocks this entire passage. It's actually a direct callback to the very beginning, to the creation of humanity itself. And there it is, Genesis chapter 2, verse 7, the creation story. God breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. By using that exact same phrase, Isaiah is making a huge point. He's forcing his audience to remember where their very life, that fragile breath in their own lungs actually comes from. So the final logic goes something like this. The source of our life is God, not ourselves. The breath in our nostrils, it's basically on loan, and a loan can be called in at any moment. That makes all of humanity temporary, fragile, and in the end, accountable. And that is why Isaiah's command is so urgent. Stop trusting in fragile human power, because when things get shaken, it will always, always fail you. So the powerful message echoing from these 4 short verses is pretty clear. When everything you know starts to shake, trust in the eternal source of life, not the temporary thing that's just holding it. We've seen collapsing worlds, worthless idols, and the absolute fragility of humanity, which really just leaves us with one last question to chew on. What could that possibly mean for us today?